is Mr. Walter McDonald, the third in the room. Oh, there he is. Didn't recognize you sitting in the back row.
Looking all distinct.
Look, yeah. Come on down front, please. Mr. Eric Davis. Is Mr. Eric Davis in the room?
Yes.
Is he? Come on down, Mr. Davis. And Mr. J. Byron Green, come on down. Come on down.
Come on down.
I'm going to ask board members who are here if you can come as well. So you can have your own individual pictures. We'll bring you one at a time. How about that? How about that? We'll have the executive director, Mr. Walter McDonald. What can we say? Thank you so very, very much. Look at you. Look at you. You know, his daddy was a preacher. You taking over? You taking over? We want to just say, you know, even before I came to the board and to the commission, Walter, you know, we were in the community working. Sometimes we fought, sometimes we agreed, sometimes we fought together. But the one thing I knew for sure is that you love your community, not just your community, but all communities. And in your quiet demeanor, y'all, if you ever had a conversation with Walter, he'd be fussing at you, but he didn't raise his voice. And I really appreciate that. And thank you for your passion. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for all that you've done to make the Providence neighborhood and the city of Tallahassee even the better. And we know that you're not going away, right? You're not moving, right? All right, so be ready for the call, if the call should come, to say, Walter, do you remember when we did this? And so thank you so very, very much for your service. They got a little script here, but I don't usually script well. But thank you for your voluntary capacity to serve the Greater Frenchtown Southside Citizen Advisory Council for one full 3-year term, and then you did 2 additional years representing the Providence neighborhood and the Southside neighborhoods totally. And as noted, as a neighborhood champion, which you are indeed, among other things, you've also assisted us, the CRA, as an application score evaluator and provided valuable input over the course of your tenure. So, and you also served as chair and vice chair of the CAC. And so on behalf of all of us, thank you for your service. It is appreciated. And as my grandmother used to say, please take this until you're better paid.
Thank you.
All right, can we get a
Go ahead.
Next, we have Mr. Eric Davis. Mr. Davis served in a voluntary capacity with the Tallahassee CRA's Downtown Redevelopment Commission for 2 full 3-year terms, equating to over 6 years of voluntary service from 2015 to 2023. Wow, you're a strong man, aren't you? That takes a lot. Noted as a valuable leader, he has an extensive financial background, and his expertise aided the CRA with analysis of numerous large-scale projects. He also assisted the Tallahassee CRA as an application score evaluator, a tourist development tax application committee evaluator, and provided valuable input over the course of his tenure. Mr. Davis was both the chair and the vice chair of the CRA DRC. So on behalf of the CRA board and the CRA staff and Tallahassee citizens, we'd like to present you with a token of our appreciation and to say thank you until you're better paid. And last but not least, Mr. J. Byron Green.
J. Byron.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Mr. J. Brian Green served in a voluntary capacity on the Tallahassee CRA's Downtown Redevelopment Commission for 2 full 3-year terms, equating to over 6 years of voluntary service from 2015 to 2023. He is also noted as a champion of community engagement, dedicated much of his personal time to the arts, educational endeavors, and economic vitality. Mr. Green aided the CRA with analysis of numerous large-scale projects. He also assisted us as an application score evaluator and provided valuable input over the course of his tenure. Mr. Green was both the chair and the vice chair of the CRA DRC. And on behalf of the CRA board, staff, and the Tallahassee residents, we thank you, Mr. J. Byron Green. All right. We're gonna get a picture. Yeah. Now, I'm a member of an organization that we have another name. All right, Pam, make sure you hang it in a very prominent place at the house. Okay, thank you. We're now moving to 3.02, the Greater Frenchtown Southside Great Citizens Advisory Committee update. It's Mr. Roderick McQueen, the vice chair. Come on down.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Board
Good
members.
afternoon.
How are you?
Great.
We had a very short meeting on July 10th at the Smith Williams Center. We acknowledge Mr. McDonald for his service and stepping down from the Greater Frenchtown Southside CAC. We reviewed and approved the minutes from the May 8th meeting unanimously with no corrections. We also went over the budget for the fiscal year 2024, and based upon legislation where we could not use any event funding from our CAC, from the CARC, I'm sorry, we recommended that $135,000 of that allocated money go back into unencumbered or uncommitted pot, and $500,000 we recommended or we suggested that they looked at focusing on affordable housing. The only agenda item that we had was a pre-application submission prepared by the Bolus Corporation. It was a project at Seabourn and King Boulevard, named the Station at Seabourn. It's a
Jacqueline?
22 3-bedroom, 2-bath.
Jacqueline DuPont Walker? Yeah, she's already in the
Excuse
meeting.
me, Mr. McQueen.
Yeah.
Do we have people on virtually or?
No, I sent it to her, and I talked to Suzanne.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr.
I'm sorry
McQueen.
about that.
Sorry about that.
Yes, the Station at Seabourn affordable housing project, housing development that was proposed by the Bolus Group. This consists of a 22 3-bedroom, 2-bath units and 1 4-bedroom, 3-bath unit, designated for young professionals and families, with the occupants would have to meet a AMI of 80%. We thought that was a little high, so we asked if the developer could go back and lower that with an average of around 50% or lower. Outside of that, we had one public comment came via email opposing the application being submitted, and there were some suggestions made by a couple of our CAC members. Ms. Maisha recommended an alternative funding source, and there was also a reference to a previous project that the Bolus Group came and presented before us over off of Tower Road. Meeting was adjourned and closed, and we'll be meeting again at our next meeting, scheduled meeting time.
All right, thank you. Board members, are there any questions of Vice Chair? Hearing none, thank you very much. And we have a copy of his written report that we will append to our minutes. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
stepping in and serving. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Next, item 3.03, we'll have our Downtown Redevelopment Commission update by Mr. Billingsley, who's serving as vice chair. Thank you and welcome.
Good afternoon, CRA board members. In the absence of our current chair, Kyle Phelps, I was asked to present to you today an update on our last DRC meeting on August 8th. We only had a few items on the agenda for this last meeting, including 2 consent items, one of which was the approval of our meeting minutes from May 9th, and the other was approving our meeting dates for the DRC for 2024. Additionally, DRC members were presented with a draft budget for fiscal year 2024. There was some discussion on the draft budget by the members, and ultimately that draft budget presented was approved. Lastly, Elizabeth Manuel presented the members with some updates from the Downtown Improvement Authority, including some updates on the former Andrews Restaurant location, as well as updating on some recent events downtown, all of which were very positive. And that concluded our meeting.
All right, well, any questions on board members? Hearing none, thank you again so very, very much. And I'm sure you have a copy of his report as well. This next item, 3.04, is the Neighborhood First Plans update. I asked the director to provide us with kind of an update and status of where we are in our Neighborhood First Plan. So, Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do I just ask you how to change the slide, or? Okay. All right. So again, this is an update to the status of the Neighborhood First Plans. If you could, next slide. So again, we'll go over the projects that we have as far as funding, and if the board has any questions, please feel free. Next slide, please. So there are currently 5 neighborhoods that are in the Neighborhood First program. 4 of those are in the CRA district. 2 of those have been funded by the CRA so far. The Greater Bond neighborhood, the Greater Frenchtown neighborhood, they have already received funding. Providence neighborhood and the South City neighborhood, they have not been funded yet, but they are anticipated to be funded in the future. Griffin Heights is fully funded by the city, not in the CRA. So again, there are 5 programs. So far, I wanted to give you all an overview. The Greater Bond has received all of their $6.4 million that's been allocated to them. Frenchtown has received 5.9, and Providence, they received $350,000 for one infrastructure project, and I'll mention that shortly. South City has not been funded at all in regards to the Neighborhood First funding. South City, although we haven't funded through the Neighborhood First Plan, we have provided substantial amount of money for affordable housing. And as you see, we have Magnolia Oaks, $500,000, and Orange Avenue Apartments, which is now rebranded as Columbia Gardens at South City, phases 1, 2, and 3, approximately $5.5 million between those 3 phases. And as you know, there's somewhere around 490 units being proposed between those 3 phases. So quite a few units of affordable housing that we have contributed substantial amounts of money towards. For Providence, the Heart of the Hill, which is a streetscape project, the CRA provided $350,000 towards. Currently, the Neighborhood Association is working with Neighborhood Affairs to finalize and develop a budget for their Neighborhood First Plan. They have already developed the plan. They are now trying to finalize the budget for that plan and prioritize the projects. The Greater Bond neighborhood, they had, again, they've already received all 6.4. The top priorities: beautification, economic development, resident empowerment, crime prevention. So again, they have completed substantial projects in regards to it. The completed programs or projects, they have the Greater Bond Linear Park Phase 1, and then the Speed Spencer Stevens Park enhancements. So they've completed around $680,000 of funding for those projects. Projects they have in progress, they have a facade improvement program for residents. They've allocated $2 million towards that. They are currently in the process of spending that money. I believe they have identified 100 homes that they're providing assistance to through this program. Streetscape, there's several road projects that have been worked on utilizing these $1.4 million. Then there's public art or neighborhood art, and then there's a housing strategy that is currently being developed. So again, there's $3.5 million that is for these projects that are in process. Currently, there's about $2.1 million that it still needs to be defined. It was budgeted, but there are several elements that needed to be revised, or the funds need to be reallocated because CRA funds could not be used for those items. So the community is looking to revise that budget so to make sure that everything is eligible, and we'll be able to bring that to you in the future.
And those items were events that we can no longer.
They were, some were event oriented, or they dealt with things that we can't spend money on. So the micro enterprise program that was proposed, elements of the program could work, but the majority of the elements that have been identified, they wouldn't be eligible for funding through the CRA. So it would be better if we just reallocate those dollars to things that there's no doubt that we can fund, instead of trying to figure out, well, that application is okay, but that one isn't. So that was one of the programs that.
Is there an expiration on the use of these funds for bond? Since it was awarded 2018, is there time that they needed to have it done by?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay.
I mean, the
All right.
money is there, meant to be used within the bond neighborhood.
Okay.
As long as it's in the plan that they have budgeted for and you all approve, they are definitely fine, however long it takes. But again, when the plan was developed, 6.4 was not going to do everything. So it really is, for them to prioritize what they can get the biggest bang for the buck, and go from there.
Okay, thank you.
So for the Frenchtown, again, July 21 is when the board approved the funding. 6.4 is what they were awarded, if you will. 5.9 is what has been currently given. We have $300,000 that's in the budget for this current fiscal year, 24, and then in 25, the last $200,000 will be going to Frenchtown Neighborhood First. So again, their priorities, as you can see: housing, economic development, community reinvestment, neighborhood safety and crime prevention, placemaking, and neighborhood image. So for their budget, they don't have any projects completed as of today, but they do have several projects that are in the works. So their housing and rehab program, the Urban League is currently the manager of that program. They've identified 31 homes that are being renovated. So it's very similar to the bond residential rehab program. And then there's enhancements to the Carter Howell Strong Park. That one is currently being developed as far as identifying what are those elements that the community wants to enhance. So that was in process. Then they have a affordable housing construction loan program. They've allocated $500,000 to that. And then they have, they've identified several properties that might be targeted for acquisition so they can rehab and get them open so that the community can utilize them or provide retail or commercial opportunities. So again, those are, excuse me so much, that is the funding that is currently out there. And they have $2.9 million that is in process. The remaining funds, they are going to be having a meeting in the near future to reallocate the funds to identify what they may want to spend that money on. Again, they have there are a couple of programs that there were some issues with them, so we're working with them to revise that budget so they can move forward. So again, that's kind of where we are. There's been a lot of money put out there on the streets to get some things going. Affordable housing, as far as rehab, keeping people in their homes have been a priority for both neighborhoods. And we'll continue to track and we'll update you accordingly.
Okay, hold just a moment. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, and bear with me, we're all a little tired. I'm going to try not to be edgy, but yeah, I'm real frustrated. This money should be on the street. I mean, it's been years since the bond was approved, bond neighborhood plan. That was one of the first votes that we took as a new body 5 years ago. Frenchtown Neighborhood First Plan should be out the door. We shouldn't be sitting on all this money. So I don't know what the issue is. If it's our neighborhood affairs staff, let us know if that's what's holding it up. If it's CRA, let us know if that's holding it up. If it's the neighborhood, let us know. But we got to get this on the street. We got to get this money out the door.
Well, and again, sir, you know, what Neighborhood Affairs has been working with the community to identify what those programs or projects may be. So again, they've allocated the funds, but some of the projects haven't been identified as far as what. So when you talk about streetscape, what exactly are we talking about? What kind of projects are we trying to improve? And that is part of what they're trying to figure out with the community as far as, you know, improving those. But again, sure. The park and the affordable, excuse me, not affordable housing, housing rehab, those are, you know, kind of the top priorities.
Understood. It should not take years to figure out streetscape. I am familiar with these neighborhoods and their neighborhood first programs, and they've made it very clear to me what their interests are. Look, you even said yourself, that we already have our partner for the rehab program. And we know the Urban League does a great job, and they have done a great job. So we have product that needs assistance. We have money available. We have partners. Let's get to work. I just don't understand, and I'm getting frustrated with what the holdup is. That's all, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we understand your concern, and I think that it may be a combination of things that may be going on. I know that, you know, having money is a problem and not having money is a problem. And we're going to have to figure out how to get it moving quicker, I guess. And no point, not pointing fingers at anybody. Let's just get it done. Let's, you know. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Yes, well, and again, that's my presentation for you all.
And thank you, Stephen. And I asked that he bring this because, you know, I'm in a grocery store, or I'm at the place, get my tag renewed, or I look on the news and press conference, people are saying that, you know, we need to be doing this, we need to be doing that. That tells me that people don't know what we're doing. So that's why I wanted to bring this so that publicly people can see that we're doing what we can do. The money's been allocated, a plan has been put in place, but we got to just, you know, work together to get it out there. The people in the community, if you didn't know, now you know that there is money and there are people at the table determining and deciding how it's going to be spent. Not us determining and deciding, but the neighbors determine and decide, and based on the Neighborhood First Plan, how it's gonna be spent. If you didn't know, get in there, let's ask some questions, and let's get this money moving in the neighborhood. Thank you, Mr. Cox. We're gonna move on to public I'm sorry, any other board members, y'all have anything you wanna say? Okay. Moving on to our public comment portion of the agenda. Do we have any public comments?
Now, we do have some speaker cards on public comments. We have 2 that want to speak on agenda items and 1 wanting to speak on unagenda. 1 speaker is wanting to speak under regular CRA board meeting, and the other one is regarding the budget. So I'm not sure how you want to do those.
For the budget, we'll save it for the hearing,
Okay,
the budget hearing. And I think we could go ahead with all the public comment.
okay, thank you. So the first speaker we have is Mr. Kayla Norris Barber, followed behind Mr. Delatry Hollinger.
Kayla Norris Barber, 527 West Brevard Street. I know you all having a long day. It's been a long day for me as well, so I'll be brief. Changes to the Florida statutes governing the CRA, use of funds for the CRA, has basically unfunded all of the Neighborhood First Plan action items around economic development and community reinvestment. So I ask that you, as you finalize your budget, I mean the CRA budget and the city's budget, I really wanted to make these comments at IA, but I got pulled away and missed my time to speak. So really, the IA budget, the city budget, and the CRA budget, that you consider plugging the hole that's been created by the changes in the language in the statute. So we know that poverty is the foundational cause of the violent crime in our communities. That's why it's so important to implement these plans. And being, quite frankly, economic development and community reinvestment is probably, for me, in conjunction with housing, is the most important parts of those plans. So if we don't have funding to implement those sections of the plan, I really don't know what we're doing. And we just can't continue to stick our head in the sand when it comes to poverty and talk about addressing crime in our communities. 2 people got killed around Day Street Community Center a couple of days ago. Those are, for me, are economic crimes. Now, the word on the street was, it was an arms deal. One guy was going to trade a weapon that he probably stole for some drugs. Obviously, that deal didn't turn out the way he wanted it to, because what they wanted to do, they weren't going to give him drugs, they were just going to take the gun. And that's usually the way it happens. And if we don't address poverty, we're going to continue to have those same issues. So please consider finding some money from somewhere to plug that hole in Neighborhood First plans for all these communities surrounding economic development and community reinvestment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker we had asked Mr. Delatry Hollinger, and then Ms. Jackie Perkins is wanting to speak at this time as well. Name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Welcome, Mr. Hollinger.
Thank you, Commissioner, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Williams. I just want to start off by saying, amen, Mayor Daley. It shouldn't take 6 to 7 years to spend $6.5 million. Just shouldn't. So I'm hoping, I'm just happy that the mayor made those comments. It's an honor to speak before you today in reference to a community landmark and staple in the Bond community, the historic Robinson's grocery store. Robinson's is a significant piece of African-American history that means so much to the residents of this neighborhood. I too am a resident of Greater Bond, and so I'm certainly invested in the continued forward trajectory of our neighborhood. Last summer, I was privileged to join with members of the Florida legislature, pastors, community leaders, and others as we came together to attempt to preserve this historic structure. Jacqueline Perkins, Priscilla Hawkins, and myself worked tirelessly to find alternative funding to preserve this building. We applied for a special category grant through the Florida Division of Historical Resources, and following a successful 2023 legislative session, we were awarded the funding. The CRA board had previously voted to pass a budget awarding $250,000 to the project as a match for this grant, and of course, this was contingent upon us receiving the funding, which has now happened. Now that a total of $500,000 is available for the restoration of historic Robinsons, let's get to work. Let's get to work because the Bond community deserves this project. Let's get to work because our residents want to see this landmark preserved. Let's get to work so that this anchor can be what it has always been for this neighborhood, and that is a resource. Let's get to work because we want to reclaim this piece of history for future generations. I also want to say to Mr. Barber's point, in addition to poverty, we have to address drugs. We have got to address drugs in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Ms. Jacqueline Perkins, name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm Jacqueline Perkins. My address is 3437 Blue Jay Drive and 1618 Keith Street in the Bond community. I am here today to present a few concerns, not only on my behalf, but on behalf of the Bond Neighborhood Task Force and 3 of the oldest churches in the Bond subdivision and their congregants who provided letters of support that were included in the special categories grant, which was written and submitted by Delatry Hollinger, Priscilla Hawkins, and myself. It was approved for funding in July of 2023. I do want to say also that as a member of the CAT team from the beginning, and I am the chair of the Safety and Crime Prevention Committee, I do hope that we can get started on allocating or spending some of this money. And because of the changes in the legislation, now we've got to go back and reallocate several, I think about $300,000, because we can't use it for some of the activities that we had planned. And I've been authorized to speak for many others, including our seniors, some of who've been in bond for more than 60 years. Though we are grateful to God for the grant funds and the matching funds allocated by the CRA by a unanimous vote, I should add, I'm perplexed by the actions of the CRA. We've had no communication with Mr. Cox or his staff regarding the status of the grant funds. Though we were the ones who actually initiated the process, spent countless hours to prepare cost estimates to rehab Robinson's Grocery, completed a very lengthy application and submitted it with Mr. Cox's authorization, none of us were notified of the award by Mr. Cox or the CRA staff. Regardless of the lack of inclusion at the end, we are appreciative of Mr. Cox's and the CRA board's unanimous vote to provide the matching funds for the grant award. It is important to note here, throughout the process to save this historic building, we found out that the CRA did not have its own EIN number. That's required to apply for grants independent of the City of Tallahassee, which is a separate entity. When we asked why the CRA did not have an EIN number, no one knew. I think it was a legacy issue. Almost immediately, the 3 of us were able to obtain the EIN exclusively for the use of the CRA. Subsequently, one of the CRA staff members was asked to obtain the DUNS number. These actions resulted in a much more efficient and effective process for the city and the CRA to apply for grants separately. We're proud of the work that we've done and the significant and historic contributions we made to the city and the CRA. Now you have the ability to pursue and apply for your own grants, Mr. Cox. We are now at a point where we can initiate the restoration of this historic landmark, Robinson's Grocery. The residents are excited at the prospect of this space being used for the benefit of the Bond community. And in closing, I will say, let's not exclude anyone from this effort, especially those who made it possible to effectuate positive and transformational change. We are better together. Let's move forward without delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
That concludes the speaker cards that I have for any speakers at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming to make your comments. We've heard them and we appreciate them. We'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is consent. We have it's been properly moved and second that we accept the recommendations for the items on consent. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much. All right. Moving on to item number 7, Greater Frenchtown.
Madam Chair.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Porter is virtual.
Madam Chair, it's Commissioner Porter.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Commissioner Porter. I didn't see you in chambers. I didn't know you were online. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on my way to the Florida Regional Planning Council Association board meeting, so I wasn't sure if a vote had been taken to allow me to participate telephonically.
No, no one had informed me that you were, that you were wanting to do that. I had no idea where you were. Okay. Haven't heard that. I'll entertain a motion to allow Commissioner Porter, Director Porter to participate telephonically.
So moved.
Okay, it's been properly moved and second that Director Porter be allowed to operate telephonically. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. All
Madam
right.
Chair, excuse me,
Yeah.
I am notified, we are notified that we also do have 2 citizens on virtually that also want to provide public comments at this time. Are they wanting to?
Okay, all right, well, okay, well, since we've already moved the consent agenda, we'll just double back. We'll go back to public comment. We'll listen to the virtual speakers. Can we announce who's speaking, who's speaking?
Ms. Priscilla Hawkins, if you can hear me at this time, if you would, you're welcome to go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can go ahead and proceed with your comments. You would give your name and address for the record, and you will also have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Priscilla Hawkins. I live at 6033 Button Willow Lane in Tallahassee. I asked to speak today about a couple of issues. The first being the Giles houses, Jiles, Willis Giles. Mr. Giles was a prominent Black entrepreneur in Tallahassee. He had his shoe factory located in Freedman's Bank, which is now called Union Bank. Union Bank is a museum now and part of the FAMU Black Archives program. As you know, I'm sure all of you have attended programs there. It is the light blue building at the corner of Appalachian Parkway and Calhoun Street. And Mr. Giles is prominently featured in that location. 2 of his houses, which he had built in the early 1900s, are scheduled for demolition. They have been purchased now by a developer who plans, as I understand it, to put student housing and parking there. We just learned about the existence of these houses, I did rather, less than a month ago. And so I am part of a team hoping to be able to save them. They are scheduled for demolition September 6th, is what we've been told by the developer. We have until that date to be able to move them off of his property. So we are asking that the city, the county, meaning City Commission, County Commission, IA, Blueprint IA, and CRA Board, consider ways that these 2 properties, which are very important in terms of African-American history in this city, that you help us be able to save these and not be demolished within the coming days. We're talking about less than 2 weeks now. $100,000 is approximately what the cost is to move both the houses. We have located some place for them to be moved to. We have talked to several movers. And in the last 2 weeks or so, we have been able to identify members of Mr. Giles' family who have joined with us in the last 10 days and are assisting us in trying to come up with a plan and in initiating some fundraising goals. So That is my ask on the Giles houses for this moment. I know I'll be followed by Jacqueline DuPont Walker, who is Mr. Giles' granddaughter. The second thing I want to bring up is Robinson's Grocery Store. And I heard both Delatry and Jackie speak on that as a member of the team that helped to write the grants and in fact initiate saving that facility. I ask that you give it your full attention, that we work on together some issues that have been brought to my attention regarding zoning, and making sure that the money that we have been given by the state, we're able to make sure that we use that money in whatever manner is effective and efficient, and to make sure that the community gets full use of that property.
Thank you, Ms.
We
Hawkins.
thank you.
Thank you.
Again, we thank you, and
Thank you,
I
Ms.
yield
Hawkins.
now.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jay DuPont Walker. You're welcome to unmute yourself. You will, if you would, give your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes as well.
Thank you so much, Honorable CRA Board. I'm Jackie DuPont Walker. I currently live at 1621 Wellington Road in Los Angeles, California. I'm a native of Tallahassee. My last residence in Tallahassee, 510 DuPont Drive. I think you've heard most of the pitch, and thank you to Ms. Priscilla Hawkins and the team who brought it to our family's attention. We see this as a continued part of the Giles DuPont legacy of working for the common good. We believe that it is not a one-off. We believe that there are definitely other treasures in history, but this is one treasure that should be saved for the good of the public. This history is the city's history. This history is the state's history. This history is Leon County's history. We are prepared as a nonprofit organization to legitimately enter into agreement with the CRA board or the appropriate local jurisdiction. We can bring all documentation. We just ask for your willingness to explore the opportunity officially. Please do not say no without understanding all the details we cannot bring today. We've identified at least 7 or 8 possible granting opportunities. And yes, Commissioner Williams-Cox, fundraising is important. Thank you for what you offered at the Blueprint meeting. And if you can direct us to those contributions and donors, we will certainly do that. We initially want to make sure we can meet the emergency. We're comfortable that we can continue to find the others and to confirm for you the historical significance of this. I do understand there was a report. I would enjoy reading that report so that we can have credible historians actually respond to it. I'm not sure the source, and add to it and amend it. Thank you for your consideration of resources within CRA. It is truly a potential economic development engine, both in the creation of construction jobs, as well as the opportunity it has for education and culture beyond. There are so many opportunities that can be a part of economic development, not only with the jobs creation piece, but the revenue that can be generated from admissions for such a museum and opportunity for affordable housing. I'm available to answer any questions you might have, and I ask for your serious consideration of giving us the opportunity to have it explored. It may be a first in the way that Tallahassee's government can respond to other cultural and historical opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. DuPont Walker. Now, does that conclude all speakers in-house, externally? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Greater Frenchtown Southside District Policy Formation and Direction. Mr. Cox.
None of this.
Okay, Downtown District Policy Formation and Direction.
No items.
Okay. And what about both districts?
Items.
No items, all right.
Excuse me. Do we have the approval of the 24 dates? Consent?
It was under.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
No items.
Yes.
Okay, so the next item would be our public hearing, which is scheduled to be at 5 p.m., but I'm going to open the floor for director discussion regarding the items that we either heard or other items that you'd like to bring forward at this time. Start with you, Director Matlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I do want to say I agree with the mayor as well on how quickly we get these out. I understand having meetings and having neighborhood involvement and that sort of thing, but we can't spin our wheels again and again if we're not finding consensus. At some point, we just need to make a decision and get improvements funded. I did want to ask about on the public comment on the Robertson store. I know it's been over a year, I think, since we've discussed it here. I wasn't aware of the grant funding. Where is that project?
We're still waiting to hear, to receive the agreement from the state. We did receive an email indicating that we did receive the award, but we're waiting on that agreement. We spoke with them. We have 2 years to complete the work, and one of the first things we need to do is hire an architect with a preservation background to look at the property, because one of the things that we're trying to do is to get it operational, is to bring it up to code. So those are some of the things. The restroom, for example, really needs to be redone to accommodate ADA compliance. So an architect is going to be needed. This grant is specifically for historical preservation, so it's about restoring, not rehabbing or renovating. So we have to bring it to the time period and that kind of thing. So there's definitely rules attached to it. And again, we have to assess what the cost is and kind of go from there. The numbers that we received with the cost of construction, I don't know if those that we received almost a year ago are good numbers. But again, we have to look at that as it goes and kind of go from there. So, I mean, again, we've committed to 250. We received the 250 from the state, but now it's kind of going from there. One of the elements, and I can't remember who brought it up, the zoning, the Bond Cat is looking to change the zoning. They've been working with growth management to look at the zoning, changing Osceola Street. If they were to do that, it would allow the Robinson store to have a few other options as far as what it could be. But based on its current zoning, it is limited to what it can be. And so we're trying to get an official, decision from the community. What do you want it to be? There still is, it's uncertain to what it is, other than the community wants it to be able to be utilized by the community. Beyond that, there still is a disagreement as far as what to make the property moving forward. So again, there's some clarification that needs to be figured out.
Do you have a sense of, I understand the uncertainty on everything you just explained, what kind of time frame we may be looking at to?
So we've been working with Neighborhood Affairs. What we decided to do was wait to bring up the Robinson store until after we find out if we received the funding. We found out in mid-July that we received the grant. So at our next possible, meeting with Bond, the idea would be to bring that up to really get that input and kind of figure out, okay, what is it going to be? So when we contract with that architect, we actually know what we're designing. I know we need to make it ADA compliant, but what the interior of the building looks like, we don't know yet.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that update. And just keep us updated along the way. And I do want to congratulate Ms. Perkins. When we first had this conversation, we were going to demolish this building. And, I think there was conversation. We didn't have the funds to go above and beyond for this particular site, but you guys went out, found additional funding. And I think that type of collaboration and that kind of push to make sure this happened led us to where we are today. So I look forward to seeing what we can accomplish on that property. And Mr. Hollinger as well. Secondly, we talked about the relocation of the housing at the last couple meetings. If there's an appetite for that conversation, I'm interested, but I'm not going to push it any further. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Richardson? Everybody's tired. We're operating on fumes. We've been at it since 9 this morning. Mr. Cox, I think what I heard, Director Porter. You have any items?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing for me.
Okay. You heard Director Matlow ask that we be kept up to date on what's going on with Robinson's store. So we want to make sure that at our next meeting, or if there's progress that's going on, feel free to send us information to let us know where things are. To date, I know that, and congratulations on the work that was done to receive the grant. And the grant amount is
It's 250
okay.
because of what we match.
Okay, so CRA provided 250 as match, and so the total is 500,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do we have any idea what it would take to bring the building up to code? I know you said the numbers have been over a year.
Yes, ma'am. We did hire a company to assess the property and determine what it would cost. And at that time, it was almost, I believe, right around $1 million to, because again, it is to restore the building. The company said they give us two options. It actually would be cheaper to rebuild it than to save it. But rebuilding it would not be an option based on the current zoning. And again, that's right now it's RP2. So you could not tear it down and rebuild that at that location.
And you wouldn't have been able to get the preservation grant had you gone that route as well,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Correct. So again, if we're going to use this grant, it has to be specifically for the exterior restoration of the building. My understanding, it's not as important what the use of the building is, but making sure that historically is, as accurate as possible.
Have we identified any other grant opportunities that we can go after to try to close in the gap or have monies to be able to complete it fully? Because I would hate to see us to begin to invest in it and not have enough to get it to its full potential.
I mean, we have looked at possible grants. We have not applied for any, but we're actively looking to see if there's anything, to try to spark it. But part of it is identifying what the use is. So, because there are grants depending on what the use is. If the neighborhood is considered a food desert, for example, there could be some funding out there to make it a grocery store or some kind of market. But again, we have to figure that out.
Okay. So you're working with the neighborhood to help determine the use?
Well, yes, ma'am. We've been, we coordinated with Neighborhood Affairs, and their recommendation was to wait until there was no point in talking about the Robinson store early part of the year until we knew if we were going to receive this grant.
Okay.
Because again, the neighborhood, the Von Cat Community Action Team, they did not want to put any funds towards this effort. So again, that's something.
Well, I look forward to a resolution that it will be determined what the use is going to be, and then we get busy with trying to find the funding to bring it to fruition, because this has been going on for a little while. And as far as Frenchtown is concerned, are there issues or challenges there that the mayor has already expressed some concern? And I heard Mr. Barber say, he's talking about poverty. And listen, and I would just offer that, we have been spending a lot of time working on poverty issues and have dedicated quite a bit of funding to try to cure some of that. And if somebody has a silver bullet, we just need to go ahead on and buy it and just use it, because apparently it is a multi-tiered issue and a very complex and complicated problem, or it would have been solved a long time ago. And so I don't want to go through a, laundry list of things that we as a city commission or we as a CRA or others have tried to do to infuse and empower communities to help lift folks out of some bad situations. But what seems to be the issue in agreement to put this money on the street and do some things with it? What are we got a small group that's not engaged in the community is not aware. What do we need to do?
Well, I think there was a lot of effort from the community to create these programs that they felt would help address some of the issues in the community, more so than infrastructure. Infrastructure, the residential rehab, those are the things that we can do all day long. Some of the programs that were being created, those lean more in the social realm and kind of fall outside of our purview. So they spend a lot of time on things that it would be very difficult for us to figure out a way to actually use CRA funds to address it. Now, they can still pursue grants or other funding to do those elements, but as far as using CRA dollars, they wouldn't be able to.
So do we need to bring in trainers or facilitators from other places where they've had success to help us understand what we need to be doing as far as in line with what CRA can fund or can pay for?
Well, we've attended several meetings and expressed what they can and can't do, but at every meeting there's new people. So there's a lot of, well, why can't we fund this? So again, there are a lot of social concerns that the community has that just aren't something that we can assist with. So again, I'm not saying that they aren't warranted for the community. It's just as far as the funding source, the CRA can't be that funding source.
All right, I look forward to us resolving that, coming to some happy medium where we can get these funds. I don't know if we're talking about additional training for our neighbors who are sitting at the table, the community at large, because I keep hearing that there's a disconnect between the people at the meeting and the people in the community. And when you call a meeting, different people keep coming, and we can't move because every time we try to move, a decision that was made get relitigated because somebody don't agree. And I know it puts us in a bad spot because you don't want to go into a community where people are disagreeing. And then, what I hear is we're dictating what they can do in their community. And that's not what we want to do. That's why the groups have been formed to advise us, to tell us what do you want, in the community. I had someone tell me the other day, we need to spend more money. How much more money do we need to spend? It's there. We need to put it on the street, execute it. So I look forward to a resolution on getting there. And wherever the problem is, wherever the kink in the line is, we need to clear the kink. And I'm happy to do whatever I can do to get it going. Because if you don't spend the money, you can't get more money. It's just that simple. And I've said that over and over again. But anyway, that's my little soapbox. All right. Anything else that could come before? I'm trying to think, were there any other comments that we needed to address of the Giles issue? I applaud the efforts of everyone who's working on the Giles project. I just wish we had learned about it before the 11th hour. And we are in the 11th hour, and it is going to be extremely difficult. That doesn't mean that it can't happen, but it is going to be extremely difficult. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered that we may not have time to get all the answers for. But I'm hoping that somebody smarter than me will help figure out how we can get those houses moved and work with the developer. Because let's keep in mind, The developer didn't just buy that land yesterday. It's been a while, but because someone discovered it and now we're trying to make something happen quickly, it's kind of hard to stop on a dime and give change. But I have the will to do what we can, but unfortunately, I can't write a check to make it happen. We got to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. And so I'm hoping that between all of the entities that have learned of this problem since yesterday, well, we got some emails, but we couldn't talk about our meeting until yesterday, that we will figure this out and get it done. I've heard today about a loan, but I don't know who the loan's going to be made out to and all of that. And I thank you, Ms. DuPont Walker, because in your comments, apparently you're hearing what we're putting down and you're giving us the words, but we've got to have some folks in front of us with some papers that will be held accountable for the use of funds. I am wearing orange or maybe pink, whichever way, but I don't look good in an orange jumpsuit, and I don't plan on wearing one for nobody. So we got to make sure that we're doing it right and help our community. So having said that, if there is no other business to come before us before the public hearing where we will deal with our budget, this meeting stands adjourned.
See you.
We're going to go ahead and call our budget hearing to order. And Mr. Cox. Director Porter, are you on? Is she
Yes.
connected? Okay, all right. Thank you. All right, we're gonna go ahead and start with our public hearing. And in this public hearing, item number 10.01, we'll have the adoption of our proposed fiscal year 2024 CRA operating and capital budget. And we're going to be graced with a presentation by Ms. Sherry Curtis. But I don't know, Mr. Cox, if you needed to key it up or just let her run for it.
No, we'll let her go for it. I think y'all
right.
been here long enough today.
Madam Chair, did you want to take public comments before my presentation or after?
Let's go ahead and do the presentation, then we'll take public comments.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and CRA board members. I know it's been a long day for you all, so hopefully this presentation, I timed it at 10 minutes, so hopefully we can get it done and we won't be too long for you all. This public hearing is the purpose of adopting the fiscal year 2024 Community Redevelopment Agency operating and capital budget. The proposed budget has been reviewed and recommended for approval by the Greater Frenchtown Southside Citizens Advisory Committee, as well as the Downtown Redevelopment Commission. Some of the highlights for the fiscal 2024 budget includes for the Greater Frenchtown Southside District, includes focusing efforts on more affordable housing and public safety projects in the Greater Frenchtown Southside District, while continuing our commitments to the Neighborhood First plans. The fiscal year 2024 budget highlights those efforts and commitments by allocating $2.6 million to affordable housing with $2 million for Columbia Gardens at South City, also known as Orange Avenue Apartments, and over $600,000 for other affordable housing projects throughout the district. Additionally, with public safety being such a high priority for the city, the upcoming budget includes $210,000 allocation for community policing. This is an effort to collaborate with the Tallahassee Police Department to address public safety issues in the district. Furthermore, the CRA's commitment to the Neighborhood First plans is also reflected in the fiscal year budget. Frenchtown has an allocation of $300,000, and a $500,000 allocation is being proposed for future Neighborhood First plans. For the downtown district, In an effort to bring more affordable housing to the downtown area, the CRA has approved $7 million for 300 workforce housing units. The CRA will also secure a loan for the $7 million to assist in financing this project, depending on the scheduling of the construction scheduling of the project. The downtown district will also utilize fiscal 24 funding for reimbursement for developers for the Gateway project, which is at the corner of Tennessee and Monroe Street, as well as the Cascades project, in addition to debt service for the CRA parking garage at Cascades Park. Another budget highlight is for the operating budget for the CRA. The operating budget for both districts is about $1.1 million, representing 13% of the fiscal 24 budget. The operating expenses represents 5 full-time employees and 1 vacant position. It includes the 5% increase proposed for city employees. For both districts, as in past years, the fiscal year 24 personnel and operating expenses are split between the 2 districts based on the amount of tax increment each district receives. This fiscal year 23, the split between the 2 districts is 61% for the Greater Frenchtown Southside District and 39% for the Downtown District. For fiscal year 24, the split is 72% for Frenchtown Southside and 28% for Downtown. This notable higher split is due to the reduction in TIF from the county for the Downtown District based on the interlocal agreement. Beginning in fiscal year 24, the county will only contribute TIF to the Downtown District from the Cascades Redevelopment Project and the 440 North projects once it is completed. And speaking of tax increment, as you can see, the main source of revenue for the Greater Frenchtown Southside District for fiscal year 24 is coming from tax increment, about 93%. Other sources of revenue for the fiscal year 24 includes prior year funds from 22 and 23, as well as reserves and parking revenue for the block and debt public parking and lease parking. The total revenue and reserves for fiscal year 24 is estimated at $6.4 million. These reserves will be used for, these revenues, will be used for capital expenses, including affordable housing projects, community policing efforts, neighborhood first plans, and standing programs such as our facade program, as well as our redevelopment programs. The proposed capital expenses for the Greater Frenchtown Southside District includes both contractual commitments and non-contractual commitments. Nearly 60% of the capital budget is allocated for affordable housing and nearly 20% dedicated to neighborhood planning. The event funding, which has been eliminated from the fiscal year 24 budget, has been reallocated to affordable housing projects based on a recommendation from the Greater Frenchtown Southside Citizens Advisory Committee, which is aided in the increase of funds for affordable housing. And while public safety is a small percentage of the current proposed budget, the intent is for this to be a 5-year commitment, contributing over $1 million to community policing efforts. To summarize the Greater Frenchtown Southside budget, based on projected fiscal 24 revenues and expenses, the Greater Frenchtown Southside District is expected to have uncommitted fund balance of over $900,000 for future projects. Any unspent or uncommitted operating or capital funds remaining in projects or programs at the end of the fiscal year will be returned to the fiscal year master project for CRA board approvals. Now switching to the Downtown District, for fiscal year 24, the Downtown District also receives most of its revenue from tax increment, but it also receives 35% of the revenues from reserves. The district receives revenues from parking and prior year funds. It should be noted in this particular presentation, Global City Workforce Housing proceeds of $7 million is reflected in the agenda item as well as your attachments, but it's not represented in the chart in this presentation because it skews the revenue totals for downtown. As mentioned earlier, the county is no longer contributing TIF to the Downtown District with the exception of the Cascades project for fiscal year 24. This has caused a 23% reduction in the amount of TIF for the downtown district compared to fiscal year '23. The downtown district capital expenses are roughly $1.6 million, not including the $7 million loan for Global City Workforce Housing Project. Most of the downtown capital expenses are allocated to the TIF reimbursement for previous projects and debt service. Projects like the Gateway and the Cascades have contributed over $75 million in taxable value for the downtown district based on the 2023 preliminary values. These physical improvements help fund future programs and projects throughout the district. To summarize the downtown district's budget, based on projected fiscal year '24 revenues and expenses, the downtown district is expected to have an uncommitted fund balance of over $3.6 million for future projects. As with the Greater Frenchtown Southside District, any unspent operating and uncommitted capital projects remaining in the downtown projects and programs at the end of the fiscal year will be returned to the fiscal year master project for any CRA board approvals. With that, I am pleased to present the balanced CRA budget of $8.2 million, with $5.9 million contributed to the Greater Frenchtown Southside District and $2.3 million for the downtown district. The recommendation for the CRA board to adopt by resolution the fiscal year '24 CRA operating and capital budget as described in the agenda item with adjustments as stated, and authorize the CRA chair and the CRA executive director to commit the funds and approve expenditures consistent with the budget as proposed in this agenda item with established program guidelines. With that concludes my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Why don't we go ahead and go to public comment, and then we'll come back for board discussion and to ask any questions. If you have anything you needed to add, Mr. Cox?
No, madam.
Do we have any public speakers on the item?
We do, Madam Chair. We have 3 speaker cards at this time. We have Ms. Jacqueline Perkins, followed by Mr. Stanley Sims, followed by Ms. Donna Cotterell. Name and address for the record, Ms. Perkins, and you'll have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins.
Thank you. My name is Jacqueline Perkins. I reside at 3437 Blue Jay Drive. My other address is 1618 Keith Street. I did speak earlier, and we were talking specifically about the budget. I'm actually speaking not to be contentious, but to be corrective. I do know that there were some comments made about what the CAT team has done. I am a member of the CAT team. We actually did meet, Mr. Cox, as you might be aware, and we were discussing at that time before the grant was prepared that we would use some of the money that was in our budget. We had a 2-2 tie, so we did not use any money from that budget. And I do want to say that because now we have to find out how we're going to have to determine how we're going to spend the $300,000 that we cannot spend anymore on the micro grant program. I'm hopeful, I think there are a couple of the team members who would be willing to also vote to give some extra money to fill in the gap. I do want to say that when we started this process, before the current CRA director came on board, I had been asked by the CRA team to get engineers and contractors so that those persons could come in and give a bid on that property. Afterwards, and I'm trying to go real fast, I found out that it didn't matter. Those people that I talked to, and they were all races, and they were women and men, they were not going to be selected. This gentleman who came in and who did the quote, he included costs that were never going to be covered by the special categories grant. And you're right, it was $1 million. We found out that at least $400,000 of those costs were factored in there. And for example, like getting a new sewer system. We didn't need to do that because we connect to the city's sewer. There were many other costs that were in there that we determined, and you were part of that when we went in with other contractors. Those contractors are people who have gone in and restored buildings that were historic buildings. So we were all on one page, and I'm going to really try to finish, but I will provide this in writing so that it's part of the written record. And regarding the zoning, Mr. Cox, we met with Ms. Mormon on July 11th, and we voted unanimously, the CAT team, to rezone Osceola to NB1, which allows us to have the same kind of buildings and dwellings and use of the store. Now, we'll say that we've had at least 5 meetings with our people, residents in Bond, and that was without neighborhood affairs. People know what they want to do with the store. And also, it's important that, you know, we tell the people in the community what's happening. So again, I'll put this in writing. Delatry and I are in touch with architectural engineers. We just want to get started. We don't want to be excluded. And once again, I did make a recommendation that we use the store as a hub for those people who are going to be in the microloan program. And since that's no longer going to be funded, we do have another $300,000. So we simply did what we thought we could do to facilitate the process and get funds that were nowhere else. And that's why we wrote the grant. But I will be submitting a letter to the commission that includes all of these bullets so that you can see for the record that we did do those. And that meeting was on July 11th with Ms. Mormon with the, we voted unanimously. So check with Dr. Lewis, Talicia, and Willeen, and we did do that. And so we would be able to have that facility there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins.
Thank you.
Our next speaker.
Next speaker, Mr. Stanley Sims, followed behind Ms. Donna Cotterell. Okay. Name and address for the record, 3 minutes, please.
Hello, I'm Donna Pearl Cotterell, Bond Neighborhood, and I know that some of you have already heard this, some of this morning, but the last that actually I spoke to you all was May 11th, and that's when we were awarded the Tourism and Development Council grant, and I was super excited. I went out in the hallway and I spoke to Mr. Cox, and Mr. Cox and I talked about this funding for this summer camp, and he said, sure. And when I got the agreement, Ms. Sheila said, you know, once you get the agreement signed, then you go ahead and submit your payment request. And that agreement was signed June 28th. Camp ended June 30th. I submitted the payment request June 30th. Unfortunately, we didn't get funded. Visit Tallahassee said that we had not advertised outside the county, which if you look at our analytics or our social media, we are outside the country. We have folks in Bangladesh on our social media. So that's neither here nor there. I want to let you know that we are moving things along, and that I'm pleased to report that Mr. Cox and Ms. Sheila have been helping greatly, tremendously, in getting our documentation and everything together with the help of Mr. Sims. We're almost there. I have some documents to get from other folks who are a part of the process. And so once I get all that documentation together, I'll get that to you, Ms. Sheila, hopefully tomorrow. And let's see, I also happy to announce, Chair, that we are going to make your funk, the P-Funk. We have a commitment from Parliament Funkadelics, and I'm super excited. We're also bringing back the Alabama Hall of Fame Blues Queen, Deidre Ruff and the Ruff Pro Band. And then we're also going to feature the Pharaohs of Funk. Aaron Watson's on our board, and I'm so pleased as punch to watch him grow. And then our children are going to perform to open up the show. So we all have something to look forward to, and I'm not going to give the date away yet. I don't want to give that away. But I just wanted to let you know that things are moving along, and that we're regrouping, we're reforming, and that we'll get that paperwork in to Ms. Sheila right away. But I do want to ask, since we are on the budget, if there's any way we can find the funding for the camp. It's $20,000. We're talking about young kids who had their first summer job with us. We're talking about the rent for both locations, our food vendor, and we heard the report, and there is funding. I don't know if things can be moved around, but if there's any way that that could happen, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mr. Sims, name, address for the record, 3 minutes, please.
My name is Stanley Sims. I'm at 1320 Avondale Way. Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, I stayed here this whole hour because I wanted to publicly thank the CRA director and Ms. Sheila for bringing that smile onto Donna Cotterell's face. Even though all the situations are not solved, we're working it out. But when she called me, she was in distress, and she was willing to give this grant back. And Sheila have really labored, not worked, but labored with her. And I like to think that, Mr. Cox, you didn't have to do this, but you did. And we appreciate that. And these resources are now coming into our community. And so the other little, after you've done all of that, just this instant with these with this $20,000 with this summer youth program, if we could just resolve that issue, if we can help her in some kind of way resolve that issue, that's not something that we don't know if she did. We know she did that. And so if we can resolve it, but I stayed here just to tell you guys, thank you. This is when government works for everyone. And I appreciate that, Mr. Cox. And it's this type of level of service that we need in our distressed areas. Because sometimes, Commissioner Curtis Richardson, we don't say the right words. We don't know the right platform. But we know we love our community and we want to help. And we come with the tools that we have. And so she did that. Again, please keep Suzanne on board. She keeps a lot of good snacks for me when I drop by the CRA office. So thank you, guys. And I'm going home.
Our next speaker, please.
I hope I get this right. Delilah Pierre, name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes, please.
My name's Delilah. I'm not going to give y'all my address. So first and foremost, the property tax increase to policing in the city of Tallahassee is not needed. We don't need more police officers. We don't need more of our public budget to go to the police. The police already take 1/3 of our public budget. The helicopter that flies around Tallahassee isn't even taken from that money. It's taken from the city and county budget combined. I and the Tallahassee Community Action Committee oppose an increase to policing, an increase to the property tax, so we can increase the police budget. It means higher rents and higher prices for everyone during a time of massive inflation. We also oppose the $200,000 you've included that you'll be giving to the CRA for quote unquote community policing. If you want to make people safe in the city of Tallahassee, improve affordable housing. If you want to make people safe in the city of Tallahassee, lower prices or create grocery stores that give people the ability to purchase things. Crime doesn't come from a vacuum. And apparently crime also doesn't come from increasing policing budgets and policing rates, because every single year in the city, we increase the rate of police. We increase the number of police, and we increase their own budget, and guess what else increases? Crime in the city of Tallahassee. The city of Tallahassee, and especially city commissioners John Daly, Curtis Richardson, and Diane William Cox, and city manager Reese Goad, hypocritically and opportunistically use the idea of a budget of public safety to fund their own personal concerns. They put the concerns of the stakeholders and developers in Tallahassee over the concerns of the public, of the people. It's not right. It's not what justice should be, and it isn't creating a fair and equitable system in the city of Tallahassee. How is our firefighters are literally coming to city commission meetings to beg y'all for extra money. They have to come to City Hall to beg you to pay them what they deserve. People come here begging for $5,000, $2,000, $1,000, petty improvements, begging for petty reforms and changes to affordable housing in the city of Tallahassee. But y'all are cynical. You believe that the way to handle crime in the city of Tallahassee is to punish people for it, to increase the number of prisoners, to increase the people who are being brutalized and over-policed. We can't give money for community policing because we don't train police to save people or help people. We train police to be militarized. We train people to attack and harass people, and that's shown by the behavior of the Tallahassee Police Department, how y'all, the behavior of the Tallahassee Police Department and the city of Tallahassee. So once again, we oppose the $200,000 increase to the CRA, and we also oppose an increase in the property tax, and we oppose the policies and procedures that are being created for the Civilian
Thank
Police
you very
Review
much.
Board.
Your time is up. Thank you. Any other speakers?
I do not believe we have any online speakers. That does conclude the speaker cards we have.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Please complete a comment. You come on to make your comments and then please complete.
My name is Mary Milton, and I'm very concerned today. And as you, as city commissioners, stop wasting the taxpayers' dollars, please. Every time you give out money, there's more shootings. Why don't you invest in the kids?
Miss Mary, let me be clear now. This is not a city commission meeting.
I understand this.
Okay.
This is about a budget for policing.
No, ma'am.
Yes.
This is the CRA
Yes.
meeting, okay? We're not dealing with the police budget in this meeting.
But it just really concerning me about the community. And the other day, I took my grandkids, they attend garbage school. And the shooting on Gibbs Drive, the first thing I told my grandkids, unbuckle your seatbelts, get in the floorboard. You shouldn't have to do that. And then an incident, my granddaughter, we have a protocol at school. One day there was a gun. A student had a gun in the classroom at garbage school. She texts me, grandmother, a gun. Raise your hand, go in the bathroom, get underneath the sink. I will be there shortly. We shouldn't have to do this as parents and grandmothers to protect our kids. And it is very scary, very. And I would like the city commission, the area, invest money in the area that the crimes are in. It's in the Griffin Heights area. But you know where all the money is going? Tennessee Street, other areas, but not the area that the crime is in. I would like to see you, and I did this once before. One of my kids like to have gotten killed, but I changed it around. As a parent, I got involved, and I had to because, you know, I like to lost my child to a gun for another child shooting into my home. And you have to get involved as a citizen. And what I like to see is a program implemented in the Griffin Heights area. I like to see members, a committee for that community. And that we don't invest in the kids. Why don't we reward these kids for their good work? They go to school all year in a low income. There's 2 housing projects, Joe Lewis and the other housing project. Why don't we just take some funding and just invest in these kids?
Thank you, Ms. Mary. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Please reach out to Mr. L. Linares Barber. He is the chair of the.
Your office and
No, ma'am. He's the chair of the Griffin Neighborhood Association. So if you live in Griffin, that's your neighborhood association president. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Are there any other speakers?
No, ma'am.
All right. Board members, we have a conversation.
Madam Chair, I noted that in Ms. Cotterell's presentation, she did ask for $20,000 for the summer camp. And apparently her program this past summer was very successful. And I'm wondering if that might be something we could consider.
I would, Board Member Richardson, I would yield to the executive director because I don't know where they are in their conversations about how to deal with that. I've received some calls that some folks didn't get paid this summer.
Right.
As a result of whatever happened. I don't know what that wrinkle was, what that complication was, but I would think that between the executive director and Ms. Cotterell, they will be able to work that out without this board having to take any action, because we're here to, deal with the budget, and I didn't see anything in the budget that we should deal with today to deal with that particular issue, because the budget is for, of course, next year. But I would hope that they will be able to, sound like they've been working together, they will work it out, figure out what needs to happen. Apparently she felt that she was gonna be able to take care of that out of some other funds that was awarded through the TDT funding or what have you. So, Mr. Cox, is that something that y'all can figure out how to work this out?
We would,
What have y'all done thus
we
far?
will definitely try our best. Essentially, Visit Tallahassee, they have the money and they have to be satisfied before they will release the funds. And they had an issue with, is the camp addressing tourism? And my understanding is they didn't feel that it did effectively. That's one of the reasons why the camp wasn't eligible for TDT funding. Now, again, for the camp, I don't know if they're going to change their mind on that or their position on that, but we can definitely talk to them and see if that's a possibility.
Okay, the TDT funds that, of course, tourism, we put them heads in beds is what they're expecting. And so if the campers were locals, even if they came from out of town, they weren't staying in hotels. So that's probably why Director Richardson and myself sit on that TDC, so we hear that all the time. So, they're thinking that's probably what happened there. So what can be, what's some possibilities to cure this issue? Any suggestions? And if not right now, some suggestions for how to cure this, if we can legally.
Again, off the top of my head, if they are considered performers at the event Ms. Cotterell is referring to, there may be a way to pay the performers, but the individuals who, gave their services for the camp, I don't know if that would be appropriate use of the funds. But again, I have no problem talking to Visit Tallahassee and seeing if there's a way, but I'll just have to kind of reach out and see what's the possibility.
Okay. Director Richardson, did you have a suggestion?
No. I just want to know if there was an opportunity for us to assist her in that way, because I know the camp was very successful. I wanted to know if there's a way that we could assist her to get beyond that issue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Cox, was there a misunderstanding on whether this camp would be an allowable use of the awarded funds? Or how do we end up here to where the camp took place under the assumption it would be? Was that a misunderstanding on their part, or is that our part?
There was a Visit Tallahassee is supposed to look at the market plan for every event and kind of give their blessing on the event. My understanding is they did not receive anything regarding the summer camp. We did not get the agreement to Ms. Cotterell till the camp was almost over. So again, she signed the agreement like on a Wednesday and the camp ended on a Friday. So it was a camp that was held prior to the agreement being signed. And Visit Tallahassee didn't approve the camp. If the plan would have been approved, it probably would have been no problem or no issue. But again, my understanding is Visit Tallahassee, they had an issue with, is this really addressing tourism? Is this bringing, people to town? And the plan that was presented wasn't effective enough as far as their perspective.
And just a follow-up question, are summer camps an allowable use of CRA funds within the district?
I would say no.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Board Member Porter, you have anything you wanted to share? Or questions regarding anything?
I have no comments on that specific issue. I do have some questions about the budget.
Okay, go ahead then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was hoping, Director Cox and I had a conversation about this beforehand, but I just wanted to go on the record. I was just a little bit confused about what exactly the plan is for determining how the $200,000 increase for community policing is going to be spent. I understand that that is part of the trade-off apparently with the city, so that the city will fund special events since the CRA cannot. But I'm wondering, I was
You're breaking up, but I think we got your question.
we will determine how it will be spent. Okay, I'm just wondering how we're going to determine how that's being spent and how that money was being spent at the city currently had we not transferred it to the that responsibility to the CRA.
Okay, so Mr. Cox, you can explain this, but as I understand from our conversation, we've had to make some adjustments due to what CRA could pay for and could not pay for, including the events.
Correct.
So the trade-off was to do this so that we're kind of swapping expenses or responsibilities with the city. As far as
Partly, yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So would you explain in that vein?
Yes. So essentially, community policing is in the statute 163 Part 3 as far as an eligible use of CRA funds. We had already planned on trying to identify ways that we could increase our community policing. In previous years, we had not allocated much at all to community policing. So this year, we've worked with TPD to try to identify what are some opportunities. So when the opportunity came to see if we could do a trade-off, that was kind of on the table to say, okay, let's commit to some community policing efforts beyond the $10,000 that we originally had, and that would free up some funds for the city to keep events as an option.
Okay, so that they would cover what you couldn't cover, what CRA couldn't cover, city could cover,
Yes.
and it provided.
I understand.
Just a moment, Board Member Porter.
Yeah.
It also provided.
I'm clear on that. I'm just.
Okay, let me finish, please. It would also allow for the funding to go beyond the CRA district. Not the policing, but the trade-off to the city, that it could then use that for events, not just within the CRA, but it could be used anywhere in the city.
Correct. The funds would not be bound by the CRA because they're city funds. Essentially, you know, we would be taking on responsibility of some of the community policing within the district, but the city would be able to host an event or partner with a nonprofit anywhere in the city.
Okay, okay, go ahead, Board Member Porter.
So is there someone from the city who can speak to where specifically that money was being spent within TPD? What were we getting for that money that we're now delegating to the CRA? Because what's confusing to me is we're saying we don't know how we're going to be spending that money as part of the CRA. But I'm curious, I know what we were spending. I know how the city is supposedly going to spend the money that we're relinquishing. You know, it's going to be special events. But what was the city doing with that money that we are now saying we don't know is going to get done by the CRA because we don't have a plan for how the community policing is, what it's going to look like?
Well, there is no one here from the city budget office, but I think that we could all preclude that because it was in the city budget, it was going to be used for other city services. But that is a question that would need to be presented to the city manager or budget staff.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to support the budget. I'm disappointed with the way that this specific issue was handled. I think it's significant enough where I would have wanted more information about it, more clarity. So I'm not entirely comfortable with leaving this so open-ended without much of a plan for even how we're going to determine how it's spent. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that what we get for this is an opportunity to continue funding for the events that we learned just recently that we were not going to be able to fund, even though folks had already begun planning them. And I know you were saying you know what would happen with the trade-off, but I think that was probably a good trade-off so that we can continue these events because these organizations were counting on that money and we kind of got the blanket pulled from under us. So I'm sure that you can get a more specific answer from the budget office. Director Matlow.
Yeah, just for clarity, Director Cox, I assume if the money's for community policing within the district, there'd be some documentation that the city would provide of how it's spent.
Absolutely.
The CRA?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And once we identify exactly what it is, if it's additional patrols or something that it would be an eligible use of funds, then we definitely will present that to you all so you know exactly what the money would be used for. But as of right now, we are working with TPD to identify that. We have not officially identified it, partly because we haven't approved the budget yet. But again, that's part of what the plan is to coordinate with TPD to identify what is the best approach and what are those elements that can be funded through community policing and go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, you have any comments you'd like to make? Okay.
Right, support the budget.
All right.
You need a motion?
I do need a motion.
I would move for staff's recommendation on the proposed 2023-2024 proposed budget.
Second.
It has been properly moved and second that we accept staff recommendation in regards to the budget for fiscal year 2024, the CRA operating and capital budget. All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Is there any other business to come before this body as a part of the budget hearing?
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Please go
This
forward.
is quick. I just would like to make the comment, Director Cox, that you please keep us updated as we get that information from TPD about how that money is going to be spent. So that's something that we can weigh in on. Thank you.
Director Porter, I did not accept that assignment because I'm completely okay with what that is, but I think that Mr. Cox will provide us with that information when he has it available. Thank you. Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Good meeting.
All of them.